Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. So today I'm going to be talking about books and money. This video is inspired by Mari Ored. My name is Marina's and I'm literally just copying her. She made up a video recently talking about basically what she spent in the year in 2020 on books, and she is someone who throughout the course of this year, and I feel like even for a little bit longer than that, she's been talking a little bit about like consumerism on BookTube and how there's a significant amount of privilege in play in terms of like the success of a BookTube channel compared to like the amount of disposable income that they have. The fact that hauls are really popular, not just on BookTube but on YouTube in general, and how again that requires a significant amount of disposable income, but no one really talks about that aspect of it as much. And she has talked about this like so much more intelligently and in depth than I'm going to do in this video. So I'm going to link to her video talking about like this specific thing, and in there she links to other videos that she's made as well. But yeah, I feel like part of my reason for doing this, I suppose, is because I personally am curious about this fact when it comes to other booktubers as well. But also I think like for the sake of like transparency and being honest with your own privileges can be really helpful. I'm also a giant nerd and I really like budgeting. Which, like, coming from someone who runs a booktube channel, I feel like is extremely nerdy. But yeah, I've basically been tracking sort of my money numbers and stuff like that for a number of years. I have a whole video talking about me and budgeting, and I kind of went through a process of trying to figure out the best ways to budget for me, and then the short version of like my money journey, so to speak. I realized I wanted to be debt free by the time I turned 30 years old. I also just kind of wanted to really have a strong sense of like financial control, so to speak. I suppose that's like the best way to say it, but basically like I wanted to feel like I was actually telling my money what to do and not letting my money tell me what to do, if that makes sense. And I feel like now I'm 34 years old and I am very much happy with like where I'm at financially. And so yeah, I'm not gonna like obviously go through my entire budget, but I feel like talking about the amount of money I spent on books and kind of how I'm able to do any of that could potentially be helpful and or interesting, or maybe everyone watching this is just like really nosy. I don't know, and I don't really care. But I'm someone who like is very much a proponent of budgeting and paying attention to your own financial life and, you know, really taking control of that stuff, especially if you are like me, a single woman. I feel like that stuff isn't taught to us either implicitly or explicitly, so I'm very much an advocate for those sorts of things. So yeah, I feel like it would just be kind of interesting to talk about how much I spent on books, just because I've also noticed that there's a little bit of a trend with it. I will say like I don't have all of my numbers on hand, but I did recognize the fact that like I started my channel in 2012. For the first couple years after I first started my channel, my book spending like skyrocketed exponentially. Like I've always been someone who has bought a lot of books, and I've always had like a dozen to a couple dozen unread books on my physical TBR. So it's not like that's a new thing that changed. So yeah, after I started my booktube channel, I remember there was one year I was using Mint. I looked at my Mint category for books and realized I spent like, I think it was like $700 or $800 in that year on books, which looking at my numbers now is like not necessarily that much. It's like compared to what I was earning at the time, that was way too much money. I was earning probably less than $35,000 at that time. I don't remember exactly what my salary was, but I'm like 99% sure it was less than $35,000 at that time. And again, I had like credit card debt and stuff like that. I was definitely like living beyond my means. And so spending that much money on books I knew was not a good thing. Now I will say, like, when you see my numbers now, I'm much more comfortable spending that amount of money on books because I am much better off financially. So like to start things off, I just want to say like I've been using a program called YNAB, or You Need a Budget, and I'm a big proponent of that program. I'm gonna leave a referral link down in the description box below. It's gotten a little bit more expensive since I've started using it. When I joined, it was like $50 a month, and I got like a discount because if you used like the original program, they gave you a discount. So the amount that I pay is like $45 a year. I think the annual price now is maybe like $80 or $90 a year. I'm not 100% sure. But this is one of those programs where like I feel like if you like use it properly and like regularly and stuff like that, it kind of pays dividends in terms of like helping you get a hold of your money situation. But you know, there are lots of programs out there in terms of budgeting, and just use whichever one works best for you. So yes, I started using You Need a Budget in 2016, and so I basically have like my book spending habit or budget, so to speak, from about 2017 until now. And so I'm gonna like run through those really quickly to kind of provide a little bit of context. So like I said, I was working on paying off my debt, and so I turned 30 in 2016. So like the year, 2 years leading up to that, I really reined in my spending habits a lot and really like learned how to, again, live within my means. And so my like book spending went from that sort of $700-800 a year while earning $35,000 to less than that while earning a little bit more than that, which obviously makes a huge difference when you are trying to do things like pay off debt or save money or anything along those lines. I also feel like I need to give a little bit of a disclaimer in terms of like me and my life and how these numbers may come across. So like I said, I'm 34 years old. I have a full-time job plus some. Like I have this YouTube channel. I like worked for Book Riot for a number of years, things like that. So like I earn a decent salary. In my opinion, I earn a better than decent salary. I also like have very low living expenses because I live in my like childhood home. And while I do like pay some bills and give my mom money every month, the amount that I spend is a fraction of what I would spend if I was living on my own, paying a mortgage, paying rent, and paying for all of my living costs. So you also have to kind of take that into mind as well. If you are like astonished by some of the numbers that you hear, it's because I have a higher disposable income than a lot of people do. So again, I'm going to go through sort of my 2017 through 2019 numbers first as like a general overview. So that way you have kind of like context for what I'm going to break down in 2020. In 2020, I'll give you the overview as well as a breakdown of what exactly I spent. So in 2017, my like book line item said $371.42, which I'm going to admit is not a completely honest number of what I spent on books that year, because I know that like for a couple of years, like specifically 2017 and 2018, I know this for sure. When I would go on vacation, I would buy books and then I would put those expenses in my vacation line item as opposed to my books line item. I'm fine with that in theory, but like for these purposes, I know that there are some transactions that are probably missing. I tried to go through like my vacation line item and see if I could pick up some more of those numbers, and I had around like $55 that were spent at bookstores that I put in my vacation line item, and there's like a chance that I've like done that with other categories as well. So for the sake of this video, let's just round that number to like $420. And then in 2018, I spent $347.86 in my book line item. And again, I know some of my book spending is hidden in other categories. I found about $60 additional dollars spent at bookstores in like my vacation line item and things like that. So we'll round that to about $400. Something happened basically in 2018, and that is that I got a new job. It's the job that I currently work at, and I got that job in December of 2018. And so there was a significant jump in the amount of money I spent on books in 2019 because I had basically my income double. It was like an astonishing moment for me. I felt extremely comfortable spending more money on books. So I did. So in 2019, I spent $784.84 on books. So I'm basically back up to that astonishing number that I had like back in 2013 or so. But this time I am significantly more comfortable with that, and I will talk more about that as I break down my 2020 spending. So in 2020, I spent a total of $615.10 on books. I'm recording this before the end of the new year, but I know I'm not going to spend any more money on books this year, so I'm perfectly comfortable with that as a number, the average of that comes out to about $55.92 per month on books, which sounds about right when I like looked at the breakdown and stuff like that. So what I also did is, specifically for 2020, I went through and I broke down like where I spent my money. I kind of wish I did this for 2019 now that I'm recording this video, but like the reason why the 2019 is higher is because the majority of the time when I am buying books, it's when I'm on vacation. So when I like go out of town somewhere, I purposefully seek out bookstores and I will buy books there. And so like in 2019, I was actually like traveling. Like I went on a decent number of trips in 2019. Again, significantly higher income. I can do things like that now. And then also like I would go to the bookstores, like when I would go out to eat and go into the city and do different things. If I was near a bookstore that I really, really love in the city of Chicago, and there are a lot of them, I might stop in and buy a book. So it completely makes sense to me that like my 2020 number is lower than 2019, but it's not significantly lower. And that's partially because like I tried to purposefully spend money at bookstores this year since, you know, lots of small businesses are struggling and I wanted to support them as much as possible. All right. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of 2020. So what I did is I wrote down exactly where I spent the money, like which stores I spent my book money on. And then if I had the information, I wrote down which books I bought, because I feel like that information is also relevant to kind of how I spend money in regards to books. But I don't have that information all the time, so I will just say that whenever relevant, but especially towards the end of the year, I obviously know where I spent my money. So in January of this year, I spent $48.79 on books. $30.10 of that was spent at Barnes & Noble. I honestly have no idea what this purchase was, but if I had to guess, I was probably buying books that I had on last year's best books list or my favorites books list. That's usually what ends up happening a lot of times in January for me, is like I will pick up books that I put on my favorites list in the previous year that I didn't own a physical copy yet. So probably something along those lines happened here. And then I went to this independent bookstore in Chicago called The Bookseller because I went to my friend's house for a dinner party and they live right next to the bookseller. So I stopped by there and I picked up one book for $18.69, and this was All You Can Ever Know by Nicole Chung. This is a book that I know for a fact was on my favorites list in 2019 and I didn't own a copy of it yet, so I picked up a copy then. In February, I spent $150.37 on books, and so I purchased a book from Barnes & Noble, but this book was specifically purchased to read for my small group, like my small group Bible study that I do at church. There was a specific book we were reading for that like spring session, so to speak, like the beginning of the year. And so I needed a copy of it. So I bought this through Barnes & Noble. So I went to Austin, Texas in February. I visited one of my friends and I went to 5 different bookstores while I was there. Austin is another city with a lot of really great bookstores. The vast majority of this money was spent while I was on vacation. So again, this is sort of like indicative of the way that I spend books or spend money on books, is like I go on vacation and I buy books at as many bookstores as I possibly can while on vacation. In March, I spent $54.99 on books, and this is in where things start to get a little bit interesting because March is basically when things went into lockdown. A lot of smaller independent bookstores were putting out basically pleas for people to continue to support them because they wouldn't be able to open their doors, but they obviously still have expenses. And so I spent $20 at Unabridged bookstore here in Chicago and $20 at Full Volumes buying gift cards. So I basically bought a $20 gift card from Unabridged and a $20 gift card from Volumes. And then the other $14.99 came from a Libro FM subscription. So I basically switched my Audible subscription to a Libro FM subscription in March. And so doing that gave me 3 credits and then I immediately put it on pause. In April of this year, I spent $54.02 on books, and the first one from Bookends and Beginnings. I believe the book that I bought from them was Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. And then from Women and Children First, I picked up Unmarriageable by Sonia Kamal. Again, this is a situation where like stores are mostly shut down, and so I wanted to support Chicagoland bookstores. So I just like bought books online through their retail shops online. And then I started a Scribd subscription in this month. And so that is $9.99. And so I'm honestly like really happy I got a Scribd subscription because there's so many audiobooks on there. And so for $9.99, even though it does like sort of throttle after you listen to a certain amount, especially during lockdown, when I was like going outside for walks as much as I possibly could during that time period, Scribd and those audiobooks were like what I turned to the most. So that I feel like is probably the best money I spent on books this year, that like continual $9.99 subscription. In May, I spent $116.89 on books. I bought 2 books from Barnes & Noble that month. That was Minor Feelings and The Five, both of which are books that I have now read. From The Book Bin, which is a independent bookstore in the suburbs of Chicago, I picked up The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is also a book that I've already read. Like, that's a book that I read immediately. I like specifically bought it to read immediately. And then again, I had my Scribd $9.99 subscription. In June, I spent $37.39 on books. Besides my Scribd subscription, I ended up picking up The Vanishing Half through bookshop.org, and I was specifically using bookshop.org to support, again, a local Chicago bookstore called Semicolon, which is a bookstore owned by Black women here in Chicago. So that cost me $27.80. In July, I only spent $9.99 on books through my Scribd subscription. In August, I spent $41.03, and again, that was my Scribd subscription, and then I bought Transcendent Kingdom using bookshop.org. Again, I'm pretty sure I used the Semicolon link to buy the book, and so that cost me $31.04. In September, I spent $49.39 on books, again, Scribd subscription, and then the other sort of $39. I'm not like 100% sure on what the total of this is, because this amount makes me think it was 2 books, but I know for a fact that one of them was, again, a book that I needed for my small group, but I don't know what the other book was that I happened to have picked up at that time, because I'm pretty sure I threw another book in my cart. I think I might have picked up Such a Fun Age at that point, because I have a feeling, I'm like 99% sure that I threw a book in my cart, which was a book I had already read that I really enjoyed, that I wanted a copy of for myself. So if I had to guess, it would probably be that book. October, only spent $9.99 on Scribd. And then in November was another big spending month because it was my birthday. And since I hadn't like been inside of a bookstore since, February, I decided to sort of like treat myself this month. And so I spent $112.95 at Barnes & Noble. There was a new Barnes & Noble that opened up in the Chicagoland suburbs that I really, really like a lot. And so I ended up buying 5 books there. And then Unabridged Bookstore, which is in the city of Chicago itself, I spent $68.07. And I actually spent more than that there. Like I mentioned earlier on in the video, I had that $20 gift card, and so I actually spent like $80 some there. I bought like 7 books there. Actual like out-of-pocket money spending that month was $68.07 at Unabridged, and then of course $9.99 for Scribd. And then finally in the month of December, I spent about $50. So for my nephews, I take them to Barnes & Noble every year. One nephew, they're brothers, his birthday's in December and the other one's birthday is in January, and so somewhere in between the 2 birthdays, I will take them to the bookstore and just let them buy a couple of books, and that's my birthday present to them. And so while I was there, I bought a couple of books for myself. I broke up the overall transaction into my gifts category and my book spending category. And so in my book spending one, I think I spent around $50. And so the books that I picked up are The Dragon Republic, which is the second book in the Poppy Wars series, and then I picked up Court of Lions, which I was in the middle of reading. I had a copy from the library, and I was in the middle of reading it, and I really, really liked it, and so I knew I wanted a copy of my own, so I just picked that up. And then I picked up Thorn, which is a book that I read earlier this year, and I really enjoyed it, and I got really excited when I saw it at Barnes & Noble, so I picked up a copy of it. So yeah, that is my overall spending for this year. Again, the total comes out to $615.10. Honestly, like all of the money that I spent this year on books, I'm like 100% okay with, because knowing what my budget is, I kind of like ran a couple of numbers. The amount that I spent on books this year was like 1% of my overall spending this year, which I feel like is a good percentage. Again, probably would have been higher, but if I had spent like $700 to $800, it would be like what, 2 to 3% of my overall spending, something like that. I'm not good at math, but let's go with that. Obviously, like my spending amount compared to the number of books that I got, it probably seems high to some people, but I'm someone who is very much a proponent of supporting independent bookstores and like local bookstores, even like Barnes & Noble, which has like brick and mortar shops nearby me. I want to support them so that way they stay in business, and I would rather like buy less books but pay the higher price for them, or pay the full price for them, and maintain these bookstores that we have in the Chicagoland area. But again, I recognize a significant privilege, and I know not everyone is going to be able to do that. Another reason why I'm like completely okay with the way that I've spent money on books this year is because I actually bought books that I had already read that I knew I really enjoyed for the most part. Obviously not all of them, but I think the majority of the books that I bought were books that I'd already read and really enjoyed, and I wanted a physical copy of to keep on my shelves. And so like one of my big things with sort of like reining in my spending habits has been also like reining in my physical unread book pile. And if you watch my 2020 goals video, or 2021 goals video I should say, I've already like talked about this quite a bit, but like my unread book pile has gone down significantly. So like I was always under 200 books, so I think at its peak I was like around the 150, maybe more than that mark. And so I've been like slowly working my way to break that down as much as possible, and I'm now at around 35 unread books, which is amazing to me. So like moving forward, like kind of thinking about the way that I spend money on books and stuff like that, like I want to continue to do things like my Script subscription, which like allows me to consume audiobooks in a really like sustainable way, and then do the thing that I have basically gotten back into the habit of doing now, is like getting the majority of the books from the library, and then when I spend money on books, I'm buying the books that I loved, that I've already read, that I know I want to keep on my shelves. The exception to this is going to be like when I go on vacation. When I go on vacation, a lot of times I will pick up books that I've never heard before, because I might pick up like local authors, or I'm picking up books that are like seller recommendations and stuff like that. Like I like looking at the shelves if they have them of like, these are the books recommended by our booksellers, or like the little tags that they'll put on bookshelves sometimes. Like I look at all that stuff when I'm at independent bookstores when I'm traveling, to kind of pick up something that will mean something to me. Like I have a couple of books that I picked up from when I was in Austin that I not only loved the book, but also like they were local Austin authors, or they have like a specific small press in Austin that I bought a book from and stuff like that. Like those sorts of things are basically like my memorabilia from when I'm traveling, besides like the pictures that I take. And so that's kind of how I want to like spend my money moving forward. And that's another thing I kind of wanted to touch on, is like I'm honestly like really happy with the way I've evolved my spending habits into having slightly more self-control. Like I don't go to the bookstore necessarily anymore and buy like 10 books at a time. I'm buying 1, maybe 2 books when I'm at a single bookstore. And then also like I'm purposefully looking out for books that I've already read and loved, and I know I want to keep on my shelves forever, as opposed to like buying books that I haven't read before, reading them, and then reselling them at a used bookstore, which again I'm fine with, because I feel like I'm okay with putting money into the bookmaking machine, so to speak, to help sustain it into the future. Again, I have like a higher disposable income, so I might as well put that disposable income towards things that I love. Books. Like I'm okay with all of that. The like final thing I kind of wanted to touch upon that Mari didn't mention, but I feel like might play a part in the way that, at least if you are a booktube content creator, it could play a part in the way that you spend your money on books. And that's basically like, I earn money doing this. If it wasn't clear, there are advertisements on my videos, unless you pay for a YouTube premium subscription, which I 100% do because I hate advertisements. But yeah, like I earn a relatively small but still revenue from this YouTube channel. So since we're talking about money, let's just go for full disclosure. In 2020, I earned about $1,020 approximately. I did like the math earlier and I didn't write it down, but it was around like $1,020 this year making booktube videos. So if you think about like the amount of money that I've spent on books, I have basically spent whatever I've earned on my books. Like the $1,020 that you get from YouTube ad revenue, there's no taxes taken out of it, so you do have to, or you should, if you are responsible, set aside some of that to pay for taxes. So like if you do the math, like the amount that I actually get in terms of like take home revenue from this channel, I basically put it back into books, which again I'm fine with, because my full-time job pays for everything that I could ever possibly need or want right now. And so I would rather use that YouTube money to buy more books, because that's how all of this functions. Like obviously I don't need to do that. Like I can still have a great successful booktube channel without spending money on books, because I have a really great library system, which again is a huge privilege that I'm very grateful for. But also, like I said earlier, I like putting my money into the machine because I enjoy this industry. I like supporting authors. I love supporting local bookstores. All of that makes me happy, and to me feels like a very fulfilling way to spend my money. So what have we learned from all this? And not a whole lot, other than I'm very happy with the way my book spending is, because I'm very happy with the way I spend my money in general. Like, I'm someone who very much keeps my finger on the pulse when it comes to my budget. It's very, very unlikely that anyone could make me really feel bad about the way I spend my money, because I'm personally very happy. Like, all of my goals in terms of like expenses, fun spending, you know, savings, investing, all of those sorts of things that like make you an adult, like my numbers when you break it down into like percentages and all of that stuff, going really well. So I can't really feel bad at all about the amount of money I spent on books this year. So yeah, I definitely feel like this is, even if you don't make a video about it, I feel like this is a fun exercise just to do, just so you yourself are self-aware of like how you're spending your money and stuff like that. Like I rambled on at the beginning, I'm very much a proponent of people being like financially aware of their own situations and getting a control on all of that stuff, so that way you can be a successful human being. So yeah, that is everything I have for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave that down in the comment section, whether it be on books or money or any of those sorts of things. I'm happy to answer them. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching.